This week's Blame Game is going to be a pretty quick one, reacting to some potential rumors that have been swirling around recently in the LCS and broader ecosystem. Given that we're headed for MSI, it's appropriate now to talk about the international structure and split structure of many of the formats around the world. Fudge and Travis on Hotline League, if you missed it.
Anything about 3 international tournaments?
Okay, so this is why I have heard that there are supposed to be 3 splits. Is the idea is that everyone will move to 3 splits so that they can add another international tournament.
Okay, I might just get fined like 10k for that one, but it's okay. What?
Fine, it was me.
Kind of leaked the fact that there's a big potential for 3 tournaments overall next year. 3 international tournaments, going from just MSI and World to presumably something that would go, it sounds like, after what would be an LEC Winter format. It sounds like there was another report that was linked on Reddit that was highly upvoted in the last week or two, saying that the LCS is going to the LEC format. That spawned some other conversations saying, people saying they hope they didn't copy it exactly. Regardless, it does seem like a 3 split future is there for a lot of the regions in the world, not just LCS, potentially, if this 3 international tournament format structure is coming through. So I have a lot of thoughts on that. On the one hand, yay, more international tournaments. Assuming this is true, again, I'm going off Fudge and Travis's leaking there. This is something I've been excited about for a long time, a more major type system, just having more international tournaments seeded throughout the year, having 3 splits that led up to them. I initially proposed this back, I don't know when actually. I would have to go back, but I think it was 2016. I think all the way back in 2016, maybe 2017, maybe it was 2018. I can't exactly remember when, but at least 5 years ago, I called for a 3 split, 3 tournament format, and I'm glad that we're finally getting it. The best parts of the year are undoubtedly international competition, and it just seems weird that we try to avoid it so much. I think it's obviously a very complex situation with all these different regions, with all these different schedules, and they have their own fan bases and these things that they're all trying to hit. And so coordinating that, I understand, is difficult, but I think people are just going to be happy to see more of these competitions going on. I hope each tournament has its own unique identity. I think one thing that's really cool about MSI this year compared to Worlds is that they feel like distinctly different tournaments. This year, MSI has no best of ones. It's all bracket play basically all the way through. It's still a slightly smaller tournament, but it has 2 teams from the major region, so it feels like a legitimate one. Whereas last year and the years before, MSI, it was fun. It was really cool to get that tournament, but with only 1 rep from each major region, and how long that tournament took, it did feel like it was leaving a little on the table for what it could be. So I think it's really cool that they have their own, it has its own identity now. It's this like double elim heavy bracket kind of thing where it's just tons of best of 5s, whereas Worlds retains some best of 1s and retains a lot of the danger of of single elimination and a bracket play. It also has the Swiss system, which I think is cool. We'll get to see that for the first time this year. I highlighted before some concerns I have about how we're seeding this kind of stuff, but at least there are changes coming to the formats. If there's a 3rd tournament coming this year, hopefully it will have if there's a 3rd tournament this year, hopefully they do something else with its identity to give this unique, cool new look. I think that'd be really hype. I would want it to be unique in some way. Maybe that one only has 1 rep from each region, so you go 1, 2, 3 as you get more reps each year from the major regions. I don't know, but I'm curious to see what they have in store for it. This naturally transitions us to the question of format, because people said LCS is copying the LEC format. I don't know if that's true or not. If there's 3 tournaments, of course it's going to be 3 splits. That doesn't mean you have to do it the exact way that the LEC is doing it with this 3-stage thing that they have going on there. And I did want to take this time to actually look a little bit about the importance of format in viewership. I've shown this before quite a few times, but I think it's time to bust it out again. This is my own research of each split of viewership taken from esports charts. And here, like, it's not 100% accurate information as far as I know, but it also is close enough. And the thing that we're looking at is trends, not like specific numbers, that you can start to make a couple things. Let me show you how to read this insanely ugly looking thing first. This number in this column is the actual viewership for this split. And same over here, this is the viewership for the spring splits. Then these are percentages basically of changes from the split before. So summer 2019 is going to compare to spring 2019, so 1 split earlier. And then the change from year is 1 year earlier, so summer 2019 to summer 2018. And so it's just a way to track year over year and split over split what is going on with the viewership growth or decline. And we'll start with North America, I guess, to talk about the importance of format, because or just factors in general. Like in spring 2016 and the end of 2017, though you're not going to see it here, this is the viewership that was at the tail end of the best of 3 format that the LCS ran, where they had 2 channels running concurrently, and you kind of split your viewership up that way. Even when you bring all the viewers together again, it actually resulted in lower viewerships. Summer 2016, if I remember, was quite low as well. In summer, I forget if we killed it in summer 2017 or in spring 2017, but either way, after a couple experiments with that, it ended up being killed. And you can see that this format was viewership not good for viewership, and I think it wasn't very good for fans. I think it was something where teams wanted best of 3s, and maybe Riot didn't have the most elegant solution. You can debate that if there would be better ones, but at the very least, I think this is one of the things that initially has made Riot shy about going back to best of 3s, and it makes some sense. I'll explain why in a little bit, but for now, we'll just kind of track the LCS viewership. This is franchising. This brings it back. It's pretty exciting. Best of 1s are back, yada, yada, yada. That kind of goes on for the next couple of years, with like minor drops in viewership coming through, not super significant. Then this is the COVID year. And so one thing I want to point out is how summer split always does around 20-ish% worse than spring split. Spring is the start of the new year. It's all these rosters. It's really hype. You watch this thing. It goes through the tournament. You go to MSI. You come back for summer and you do it again. And it makes people not feel as enticed in summer split because you're watching something you've already seen before. And so pretty much universally, this is true also for Europe. If you look, change from split for summer is almost always down 25-ish%, maybe 15, yada, yada, yada. There's one notable exception in summer 2020, and that is COVID. And this is a worldwide trend. Every split or every region basically saw a bump in viewership in 2020 summer because of COVID hitting and basically forcing lockdown on everyone. So this is a bit of fake news, if you will, where the viewership is actually not that significant. And then you kind of right back to it again here. But the thing that I wanted to highlight is just one that, the best of 3 had hurt before. And then here in spring 2021, we made it so that spring's record carried over to summer because there was this belief that spring split didn't matter, even though you could look and see that spring split's viewership is always higher. And for viewers, it mattered just fine. For pros, I guess it didn't feel like it mattered. And this was something that they wanted to make spring feel like it mattered more. And so suddenly spring split record carries over to summer split. This obviously has disastrous knock-on effects for summer split because you're watching Immortals start the split at 5 and 13 or whatever it was that split, and it really dehyped a lot of the matches right from the get-go. And as you can see, this is actually one of the biggest drops from split that occurred even in any region. As you can see, no one had ever dropped almost a full 30%, which happened here, as well as the fact that it really hurt from the year before, where things are beginning to open back up and you're losing that kind of COVID bump, and you get to see how significant that was. For that kind of carried over into the next year. Spring 2022 was not hype at all. Problem was that this drop in viewership actually continued over to the next year in spring 2022. You did not get the bump that you normally see that returns up here. And I would say, admitting my own problems with the broadcast here, it was not a great product at that time. Everyone think this made by many, LCS 10, what are we doing exactly here? There was a lot of changes in flight about what the LCS was going to be. This was a lot of times that it was getting negative attention. And it sort of bottomed out here last summer, where people, I think, realized that it was starting to become a pretty good product again. And it was actually, without format changes or anything really coming in, pretty good retention from spring to summer. 90% would actually be one of the highest without the COVID bump in any region. And I think it felt like potentially maybe things would be recovered. Now, obviously, spring this year not only had the format and time change, which was its own negative press. There were a lot of changes with talent and things like this, and a lot of fans were not happy. And I think you can see that the negative trend has actually continued, despite looking like we might have slowed it down here. I also think it's fair to say that there was a lot of really hyped playoffs that kind of brought this number back up higher than maybe it would have been, because we almost had every single series go the full 5 games, and that will inflate viewership a little bit. But you can also just look at the peak numbers, and the peak numbers were higher here, and the peak numbers were higher here, and they're down here. So regardless, it does feel like some degree of fans churned out again heading into spring split, and who knows what that means for summer. It's obviously very scary. Now, the reason I highlight this is to show the importance of format and things like that can have on viewership, because I want to go talk now about LEC actually, and the 3-split format that they have recently adopted, which has somewhat ruined my formatting. As you can see, Winter leaning off the page there. And you know, they've gone through a lot of the same stuff. Summer 2017 was when they basically got their rebrand. Things were looking quite dire for the LEC, and it was when it was EU LCS, and when it became the LEC, I've talked about this before, there were a lot of changes, not just with rebranding, but like structurally that allowed them and unlocked them to do all their own stuff. They have done a much better job of retaining that bump from COVID. It goes up all the way to 300,000 in summer of 2020. And, you know, while it does start coming down a little bit, 270 is actually quite good, you know, and it's actually 270 over here if you can't see it. So it's 270 at the start of the last 2 years, even with COVID. And as we said, every time a split ends, you see this drop in viewership of roughly 20-ish%, 12, 22-ish, 15, you know, whatever you want to call it. It's almost always a pretty significant drop. And the scary thing for me is when you do 3 splits, you want to see if that trend actually continues. And as you can see, for this split, it did continue. And maybe this will go back up a little bit with their finals approaching. I think it's this weekend, or maybe it's 2 weekends from now. 2 weekends from now. But as you can see, this might continue into summer. And if you project that down again, it's rather scary actually to continue to lose viewership in that way, because the splits just are the same all the way through. So while I'm excited for 3 international tournaments, I do think that there is this problem that you're gonna have to answer at the middle of it, which is how do you retain a viewer's interest over the course of the whole year when all the exciting roster information and new stuff has happened in the off season between Worlds and the start of spring/winter, whatever you're gonna end up calling it worldwide. How do you retain viewer interest across the entire year? Well, my pitch for this, much like there's asynchronous tournament formats, would be to make asynchronous splits. This is something that has been universally true in almost every region as far as I know, but every split is the same. The format is the same. There's nothing unique or interesting about each format. You just go from one split to the next, and maybe there's championship points that carry over. Maybe one split's a little longer. Like if I remember correctly, sometimes people played like 21 games or something, you know, like we've had little changes before in terms of like the amount of games played, but more or less they're the same. If you want to give viewers something exciting to watch for each split, don't give them something that they already saw. Even if it is different because like little roster changes have happened or people have gotten better or the meta's changed, give them something a little bit more exciting to be looking forward to. Yeah, this split was all best of 1 double round robin, but this next one is best of 3 Swiss or something, and this next one is something else. And I think given that we're going to be having faster splits, you can lean more into the identity of a single format for each split. Right now, for example, the LEC has effectively 3 formats in a single split, where you have the best of ones kind of from their first phase, then you have like a Swiss group stage, and then you have like a small bracket. Just make that 3 different splits. In theory, obviously, you're going to require some level of tournament play to decide a winner in each single split, but you can have one that's heavily best of 1 round robin stuff that leads into a small tournament bracket that goes on. You have a Swiss groupie thing that's going to seed a small bracket or just like lead to a tournament, and then you can just have a big fat ass tournament for one of them. I don't know, but I think it's an interesting space that we're heading into with 3 splits coming up. And you can also say that this isn't a problem, that, you know, like I'm posing this as like the split to split problem, where every split you're going to lose 20-ish% viewership, and when you move to 3, how do you stop that from happening? Maybe they decide that's fine. Maybe the higher ups at Riot know this trend, they say this trend's fine, we don't care, we're chill with it. But for me, at least, it's an interesting question of what can you do, what are the highest engagement splits? Now that we have 3 of them, you can maybe try a little bit more experimenting because you have this extra wiggle room. Anyways, that's going to do it for my thoughts here. Thank you guys for watching. Sorry it was a weird blame game, but getting ready for MSI, prepping, seeing if, who knows, maybe I'll be there, maybe not, but got to do the work on all the international teams that I definitely watched the entire year. Anyways, that's going to do it. Catch you guys later.
Hey, thank you so much for watching this piece of content. I love Raleigh, North Carolina. I have never ever expected to be here, but it's been pretty cool. I've had a good vibe situation going on here, and I wouldn't be able to afford to travel to Raleigh, North Carolina to cover the LCS Spring Finals if it wasn't for Alienware. So thank you so much to Alienware for supporting my content. I've got my X14 right here. We're at the hotel, and that's what allows you to get this coverage. So thank you so much to Alienware for the support. You can check them out at the link in the description at alienware.com/Travis.